achieved.
You know, I feel that everyone should be given a fair opportunity, and that's, you know, to feel safe and to feel respected, and that's, you know, Cyborg obviously was disrespected by Joe Rogan and Dana White. I believe Joe Rogan has officially come forward since that scenario and apologized and said he should have said that. I don't know if Dana White has, but I find it very odd timing on Cyborg's part to suddenly throw this out there. You know, she's been fighting with the promotion for a couple of years now, been a champion, you know, been in there, and it seems like it's weird timing, and a lot of people are supporting the argument, and it's hard to deny that this might be her out to avoid a Amanda Nunes fight. And Dana White has come out and said, you know, she doesn't want hard fights anymore. I don't think she looked as terrible as Dana White is subscribing, and I thought Joe Rogan oversold her level of exhaustion and how, you know, and that she didn't look like her dominant self. I think that Felicia Spencer looked fantastic as far as her durability. She was in there, slugging it out, taking what she could take, and it was just, she hung in there. And Cyborg couldn't get her out of there, but dominated the fight pretty much pillar to post, short of a few moments. But I do think that this whole, they need to apologize before I return to action type of dialogue is potentially a way to avoid the Amanda Nunes fight. And Cyborg is looking over at Bellator right now with Scott Coker, a former employer, saying they have a featherweight division. Currently, Julia Budd holds the title. I don't know how deep the division is. I really haven't paid that much attention to it. But they have a champion who's won a couple of fights. Cyborg could easily go over there, fight once or twice, maybe probably once to get a win, and then fight for a title, take down some more money in Bellator and have some success there, and then ride off into the sunlight with a couple title defenses and go from there. And I think that's maybe what she's looking to do, is to avoid signing with the UFC, saying, I don't want to work for guys who talk like this, even though it seems like that time had passed, and avoiding the Amanda Nunes super fight rematch and going her own way. And if that's the way what she wants to do, I have no problem with that, but just do it. Just say, you know what, I just don't feel like I want to return to the UFC, sign with Bellator, and that's kind of what I anticipate she will do, unless the UFC steps up with a big money offer to make that match happen. Because it's a very interesting opportunity. For the record, I feel if Cyborg does disappear or drag her feet, we're going to see Nunes versus Duratami in the not-too-distant future with the 135-pound title on the line. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking the upcoming UFC on ESPN 5 card, which will take place in Newark, New Jersey on August 3rd. It is an afternoon event, so be aware of that. I believe the main card starts at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so make sure you don't miss out on that. I have a lot of people come along, and they end up not recognizing the early start and miss a lot of the fights. I'll be giving you my 6 main card predictions in this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks, I believe there will be 6 in total, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, I'm coming off a reasonably respectable UFC 240 event. I went 8-3 overall, and if you look at my hardcore betting cluster, all my gold plays hit. I had Araujo and Holloway and Tarzukin and Holloway paired together. They both won. I had Eric Koch as my top silver play. It cashed in. I also had Araujo by decision and a wildcard play cashing in. For my casual betting cluster, I did put Araujo, Holloway, and Tarzukin as my number 1 play, all paired together, which worked out well. I needed someone else in my casual betting cluster to come through. For example, for my silver play, I had Figueiredo, Koch, and Sarah Froda to parlayed, and they just did not get the job done. I needed one more of those fighters to win. I needed Froda to win, and that would have been really awesome. Had she also, and had she won as well, we would have had a great night with the hardcore betting cluster. Either way, successful night for those of you following the HBC betting pack or HBC betting cluster. And they'll be for sale for $15 in the bet shop. You can also pick up a limited subscription for the rest of August, as when this event eventually goes down, and save yourself a few dollars. You can also follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions, and if you're looking to subscribe to me on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe and hit the little notification button so you get told when I post the videos. They usually go up anywhere from Tuesday to at the latest Thursday if something comes up. This event should be up. This one is up Wednesday night when it's all said and done. And on that note, let's get to our first main card prediction. The main card gets rolling in UFC's light heavyweight division as Serbia's Darko Stosic, 13-1, takes on the 6-1 Nigerian African Savage Kennedy. And again, these names are difficult to pronounce. Kennedy Nzechukwu. I think that's correct, but we'll see. I'm sure somebody will correct me if it's not. This is a bout between two relatively new UFC light heavyweights. Stosic won his debut. Stosic Stosic won his debut over Jeremy Kimball, but fell via decision to Devin Clark in his next matchup. For Nzechukwu, he looked decent early against Paul Craig, but then slowed and got submitted with 40 seconds left in the final round in a fight that I would say he probably would have won on the scorecards. It wasn't a foregone conclusion because Paul Craig did some good work and it could have been one of those split decisions that could have gone either way. For Nzechukwu, he's 6'5". He's a big light heavyweight, 5 inches taller than Stosic, 7-inch reach advantage, and they are the same age. I think both born in 1992. Now, it could be argued that Nzechukwu got caught in the bright lights of his debut fight. He fought twice in the Contender Series, but again, going to that next level and going to the UFC is a big step up. He dealt, and he just faltered late in that matchup, made a mistake, and it cost him. He's a very raw talent, physically a lot of gifts. He's still developing, and he has lots of tools to work with, which is absolutely fantastic. We'll see if that he can flesh his game out and become, someone who's capable and someone worth watching. Now, when he fought Paul Craig, he was fending off a lot of early grappling and submission exchanges, and that eventually caught up to him, maybe tired him out a little bit, and it's something you don't see necessarily on the regional scene quite as much, especially for a guy who only had 6 fights coming into it. On the feet, he does a good job pumping out his right jab. He has a nice straight left. He seems more aggressive once he gets his opponent backed up to the wall, which isn't surprising. As soon as your opponent's movement is limited, you can open up a little bit. He has a nice head kick, which is a big weapon, especially if he's a shorter fighter like Stosic. He has a couple knockouts in the regional scene with that head kick. When he's in space, though, he doesn't throw a ton of volume. He's working forward and throwing single strikes. He tries to stay active, but he's not going to overwhelm you with big flurries of offense until, as I said, he gets you backed up towards the cage. Now, for Darko, he is a kickboxing-based fighter. He trains with Mirko Krokop, or did train. 8 of his 13 wins have come by knockout. He has 1 submission win on his record as well, and he's 8 first-round finishes. Now, he is by no stretch of the imagination a high-volume striker. He likes to stalk forward, hands up, tight guard by his chin, looking to land power shots, but not throwing a lot of volume. In fact, he likes to counter-strike, tries to catch his opponent as they step in and throw that counter. Against Devin Clark, he had some success with a counter right against a body kick that Clark tried to throw, but again, he's looking to time you and drop you. Now, with Clark, where Clark was having success against Stosic was with his stiff jab. In fact, he dropped him in the first round, just slamming that jab right through the guard, and there seems to be a little bit of an opening in Darko's guard. We also saw Clark drop him with a spinning elbow and was really outworking him at times in the first and third round. Now, Stosic does come from a judo background as well, and he was able to counter in his debut against Jeremy Kimball, who's just scrappy, not an overly great fighter, but just a scrappy guy. He was able to counter Kimball, a takedown attempt, went in top position, and just landed this this undefended ground and pound that eventually forced the stoppage. Up until that point, he didn't really do too much of anything in the feet and just kind of followed him around the ring very methodically. We did see him go for some takedowns against Clark, landed a big slam, held top position to end the round, but again, no real damage. It seemed like maybe he exhausted himself looking for that position. It didn't really work out for him too much, and he lost the fight as a result. He was breathing very heavy in the third round, which was something we kind of anticipated. I had Stosic in that fight, but I felt that if Clark could wrestle him and really extend that fight into the later stages, it was his matchup to win, which was the case. For a guy who's not overly active, he became less active in the third round, not as much power and snap behind his punches. His hands were dropping a little bit. It just wasn't a good look for him. And he had a few moments where he attacked and engaged, but it was far and few between. When you look at this matchup here, Nzechukwu's physical attributes are going to present some issues, especially his length. His height and his reach are going to be massive issues for Stosic. If Darko, he's going to struggle to find home for those big shots. And again, if he can't in the first round, look for him to find less success in rounds 2 and in rounds 3. Again, and I talk about some of these European heavyweights coming over. A lot of times they fight in the regional scene in Europe, and they're facing blown up light heavyweights. These are light heavyweights. Blown up middleweights, or even guys who should be fighting low. And it's just when they get up against these guys that are just massive guys. In the UFC, it becomes an issue, and they don't have the success knocking them out and just overwhelming them they do on the regional scene. Look for Nzechukwu to land that jab with regularity, splitting that guard, maybe busting up Stosic, really making it difficult for him to find his timing, find his counters, and he'll be swinging and missing with the counters because he has such a distance to cover. And again, with that Stosic being such a much shorter opponent, I would anticipate that Kennedy's head kick is going to play a factor as well. I think at some point he will catch him, potentially as he slows down in the later rounds. But again, it could come in the first frame as well. And my prediction is Nzechukwu to defeat Darko Stosic by TKO. In the UFC's lightweight division, we have a matchup of Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman, 12-3, taking on South Korea's Maestro Dong-Hyun Ma, formerly Dong-Young Kim, changing his last name or at least altering the way he's being recognized to avoid some being some confusion with the stun gun, the former welterweight contender. Now, Holtzman's coming off a loss to Nick Lentz. He had won 3 in a row and 4 of 5 and was kind of finding some ground. Now, almost all of his wins, though, have come over opponents no longer in the UFC. Now, you look at Dong Hyun Ma. He's coming off a TKO loss to Devontae Smith. He had won 3 in a row, and he had won 5 of his last 7, some outside the UFC. But all of his UFC wins have also come over fighters no longer in the promotion. So you kind of see where these two guys are at. Ma, 2 inches taller than Holtzman, 1 inch reach advantage, and 5 years younger. Now, the defining characteristic of Holtzman's losses, because there are some things we need to look at here, are takedowns. Nick Lentz, the guy he just lost to, scored 5 takedowns. You go back to Josh Emmett, he landed 8. And then his first UFC loss against Drew Dober, he gave up 5 takedowns. Overall, for you mathematicians, that's 18 completed takedowns by his opponents in his 3 combined UFC defeats. Conversely, when you look at his wins, over 5 UFC victories, he's given up just 5 takedowns and landed 14. So you really see Holtzman, for a lot of the other needs, to just shut out his opponent's ability to put him on the mat or do a better job himself offensively and have some success there. Now, for Dong Hyun Ma, my apologies, all 3 of his UFC losses have come by knockout. He's been stopped in all 3 of his losses. And you look at some of the numbers, 2 of his 3 UFC wins have come with over fighters with a combined 4 wins by knockout in 41 career fights, so not known for knockout power. And then the other guy was Takanori Gomi, who is just a shell of his former self and not in a position to knock anybody out at this point. Where you look at the 3 guys that defeated him, of their 36 combined career victories, 20 have come by knockout. So again, if you have knockout power against Ma, you're going to find yourself in in a good position to win this fight. So then when you have those characteristics and those dynamics in place, of these 2 guys, who clearly fits the characteristics of their opponent's more troublesome opponent and more troublesome description? Now, for Holtzman, he has just 4 wins by knockout. So for a guy who hits pretty hard and has got pretty good boxing, you'd figure of his 12 pro wins, he'd have more wins by knockout. But just 4. 1 in the UFC. But he is durable. He's never lost by knockout, so that's also key here as well. Now, for Ma, he has completed 0 takedowns over his last 3 fights. He's actually attempted no takedowns during that stretch as well. He did have some success. You go back to 2016 against O'Reilly. He landed 4 takedowns. He had 2 against Marco Polo Reyes. He does have a judo background, but again, his style is not to come in and spam takedowns and shoot and put you on the mat or look for that body lock takedown. Now, Holtzman, in his most recent victory against Alan Patrick, who's a decent fighter. Holtzman did show some good takedown defense for a guy who's known for spamming takedowns and putting you on the mat. Holtzman's a pretty physical fighter and was able to counter a lot of what Patrick threw his way. Again, Ma's not that traditional wrestler like a Nick Lentz or even like a Josh Emmett who's going to shoot from the outside and put you on the mat, which is where Holtzman has struggled. Now, for Holtzman, he has some power, despite his numbers. He's got solid boxing. And when you look at Ma's numbers, he gives up 4.5 significant strikes a minute. He gets hit a lot. Conversely, he lands with 3.5. So he is getting hit almost 1 strike more per minute than his opponents are able to damage him with. When you look at Holtzman's numbers, he lands 4.3 per minute and gives up 3.4. So all the numbers favor him. He lands 1 more strike per minute than Ma, and he gives up 1 less strike per minute. So over a 15-minute fight of this where we go, that certainly favors the American here. And I think, for my money, the South Korean is just too willing to take damage and doesn't land as much as Holtzman, and it's not nearly as impactful. If Ma was more committed to his takedowns and I had the confidence he was going to go in there and look to put him in the mat, either shooting from the outside or from the clinch, throws and trips, I would consider him here. And I know some people are backing Ma here, but Holtzman, he's a strong fighter in the clinch. He will shut down Ma's judo as far as I'm concerned, or avoid it altogether by simply working from the outside and using some good footwork and creating separation. Look for Holtzman to pile up the damage against the less durable and more hittable fighter. Holtzman's never lost back-to-back fights in his career. He usually comes out motivated once he has that loss added to his record. And again, Nick Lentz, it's no shame in losing that. You look, see what Josh Emmett's doing. So those are some decent fighters to lose to. And Drew Dober's put a good run together as well. I think Holtzman's just a step above Dong Hyun Ma here. And my prediction is Scott's Holtzman to defeat Dong Hyun Ma by TKO. The only middleweight fight on the card features the 11-1 Trevin Giles taking on veteran GM3 Gerald Meerschaert, coming in with a record of 28 wins and 11 losses. Now, Giles is coming off his first career defeat, a late submission loss at the hands of Zach Cummings, a fight I had Giles in. Most people felt Giles was on the route to winning a decision. It was a very interesting, very close fight. I really enjoyed it, despite being on the wrong end of it. He had won 11 consecutive, obviously, including 2 knockouts to start his UFC career. For Meerschaert, he has lost back-to-back bouts, submission loss to Jack Hermanson, who's very much on the rise, and a split decision loss against the talented but frustrating Kevin Holland. Meerschaert started his UFC run 4-1 and was 9-1 in total, including that 4-1 stretch, which helped get him the call to the big promotion. Physically, Meerschaert 1 inch taller with a 3 inch reach advantage. He is the older fighter by 5 years. For Trevin Giles, his last fight, he came in off after a 17-month layoff. So he had got off to a good start in the UFC and then took a break. So you got to keep that and take that into the equation as well, that he's having a better turnaround here for this fight. Now, Giles, overall, he's a solid striker. He's very quick. He strikes very long, which I like. He's got a very good left jab. He lands good offense when he throws. But against Braga Neto, who is his second UFC victory, he kind of benefited from Neto slowing down in the feet. When he fought Cummings, he wasn't letting his hands go quite as much as I wanted. It seemed like he was waiting, maybe a little bit of ring rust there, maybe a little bit of concern, not wanting to get taken down. But he certainly had a bit of issue there, letting his hands go. He has a very fast straight right, not a lot of setup to it, but again, his speed and his length, or the way he extends it, allows him to throw it like that. He will sit back with it. Again, as he was struggling to land with regularity against Cummins, and the thing is, Cummins actually was having some success when he was pushing forward and engaging and being aggressive. And Giles was counter-striking, but again, Zach was leading the dance at times. Now, Giles had issues with the fact that Cummins is a bit of a southpaw, and Cummins, I think, Giles switched stances a little bit, but we saw Cummins have some success, especially the body kicks, and that's something Meerschaert is a southpaw, and he will throw some body kicks as well. Giles eventually was dropped with a big left hand and choked out by Cummins late in that matchup. When he fought Braga Neto, he was taken down in the early stages of that fight, spent a lot of time on his back in the first round, and again, benefited from Braga Neto being he's some ring rust and just gassing out himself. Now, Meerschaert's a very crafty submission fighter. He's dangerous on the mat, but he's also vulnerable there, as we see he's been submitted a lot if you look at his record. He will initiate grappling exchanges and try and scramble to a better position. He loves that front headlock where he can control his opponent and either set up subs or just rotate to their back. He's got very good chokes, rear naked choke, arm triangles, guillotines. He's very good at those positions. Against Thiago Santos, when Santos was still at middleweight, we saw Meerschaert close the distance very quickly, use a body lock takedown, and drag him down. And Santos is a pretty strong guy, so it's pretty impressive to see him do that. We know Santos has some grappling deficiencies, but Meerschaert exploited that. He pulled guard, and he'll look to sweep if he does that. Against Kevin Holland, he shot early and scored a takedown, nearly caught Holland in an early submission. He actually had him in a mounted choke, couldn't finish it. Back and forth transitions on the floor where, again, he got exhausted. And one of the things with Gerald Meerschaert is he routinely gives up position for submission, and that's something you don't want to see at this level. He transitions so much, he actually wears himself out. He still keeps driving, he's still capable of finishing fights, but he tends to wear himself out. But on the other side of things, we did see him against a couple guys. Was it Eric Wisely or Spicely? I know one's a smaller fighter, one's a bigger one. And Oscar Pihota, he was able to survive some early struggles and then rebound and take care of that fight in the second round. As I said, on the feet, he's got good body kicks. Spicely and Pihota. He dragged Pihota into a brawl and overwhelmed him and closed out with big elbows and knees in the clinch. Had some success there. He dropped Pihota during an exchange. But he's not really a durable fighter, and that's my problem. So he was dropped by Pihota. He takes a lot of damage. He's very hittable, and he ends up folding up at times and going down. Holland, I think, kept bailing him out. Could have got the finish, kept bailing him out by going to these grappling exchanges, going to a place where Meerschaert was better suited to defend. Had Holland just forced him to stand, he probably could have finished him. In this matchup, Trevin Giles needs to absolutely avoid the grappling exchanges. And if he can shut down Meerschaert early, I think he will see him take this matchup over. Gerald's just too willing to push the pace and exhaust himself and not necessarily going to get the benefit out of it. I think Giles has a good enough wrestling to avoid a lot of what's going to happen on the mat, and his striking is just superior. He hits pretty hard, and I think he can get this one out of there. So my prediction is Trevin Giles to defeat Gerald Meerschaert by TKO. Continuing on, we get another really fun fight. There's a lot of fun fights on this card where, you might not necessarily know the names, or maybe the casual fans, if you're listening to me, you're probably less of a casual fan and more of a hardcore, or you're just into it. But these are just some really good fun matchups. And up next, we're in the UFC's lightweight division as Joaquim Neto BJJ Silva, 11-1 overall, takes on Germany's Nasrat Haqparast with a record of 10 wins and 2 defeats. Now, Haqparast lost his debut to Marcin Held, but has won back-to-back fights against Thibaut Gouti and Mark Diakese, so pretty impressive performances there. For Joaquim Silva, 4-1 in the UFC, solid record. He knocked out Jared Gordon and Andrew Holbrook, a couple of split decisions along the way. His lone loss to very, very feisty Vince Pichel, who just picked up a win over Roosevelt Roberts, which I correctly got. Now, Haqparast comes in 2 inches taller. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger fighter by 6 years. Now, Silva's very dangerous. Let's get that on the table right away. He's very dangerous. 9 of his 11 wins have come by finish, 6 by knockout, 8 stoppages in the opening frame. Now, he is 3-1 outside of round 1, which when you initially look at it, you go, okay, he's not this type of fighter who's he can't get the finish, he's kind of going to fade and disappear. But of his 3 wins, 2 have come by split decision, and the third one was that late knockout against Jared Gordon in a fight that he probably was en route to losing, where Gordon had his leg compromised and just eventually got put away. So, in fact, his record outside the first round, while decent, is a little deceiving. Silva likes to throw everything into his offense. Hard strikes, big power. He's not a consistent output fighter. He doesn't blow guys out of the water with his volume. He's looking to put your lights out with one shot. Vince Pichel beat him by being more active, and again, Jared Gordon was ahead on the stats as well overall when that fight came to an end. Now, Jared Gordon actually in the first round hurt him a couple of times. Early, put him down in the first, and was having a lot of success just outworking him and doing some damage and really put him in some bad spots. But again, got his leg compromised and lost his mobility and lost the fight later. Now, for Haqparast, he has power as well. At least he showcased some of that in the regional scene. 8 of his 10 wins by knockout. 6 in the first round, 6 first-round finishes. 4 straight third-round fights, though. And you see that with the guys on the regional scene who are blitzing opponents, putting them away. You get that step up in competition, and we see fights start to get extended and lengthened out. His volume is good. 2 fights, 124 significant strikes against Guti, 93 against Mark Diakase. But more importantly, especially in the Diakase fight, he does an excellent job of limiting his opponent's striking success. And when you take a deep dive on the numbers in those 2 matchups, for Diakase, he threw 220 significant strikes and landed 50. That's a 22% accuracy rate. For Thibaut Gouti, he landed 78 of 284 significant strikes, 27% accuracy rate. That tells us that Haqparast is doing an excellent job of negating his opponent's offense, fighting at the range he's comfortable with, getting in, landing his offense, and then doing a very good job defensively avoiding theirs. For Joaquim Silva, he operates in that 40 to 50% landing rate overall, usually throwing between 100 and 190 significant strikes. If Silva is able to limit him even sub 30, he's not going to have a lot of offense, connected offense in this fight. If Haqparast can limit him, the fact that Silva's looking for that big power shot, low volume, dangerous one-shot opportunities, they're not going to be there. And if he can't get the stoppage, he's going to have a lot of trouble putting up enough offense to win this fight. The pressure that Haqparast maintains does put him in firing range of Silva's power, but again, he is very good at limiting his opponent's offense with his footwork, with his movement, and he does a nice job of just maintaining understanding of where they are and what they're throwing. Look for Haqparast in this fight to put together a similar approach to what Jared Gordon did, being more active, cutting off the cage, putting pressure on Silva, and just landing more strikes against him. And again, Haqparast appears to be the more durable fighter as well. Silva's struggles in longer fights are concerning and certainly will be an issue here. I think Haqparast pulls ahead early and avoids the majority of Silva's return fire. My prediction is Nasrat Haqparast to defeat Joaquim Silva by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's lightweight division as Jim A10 Miller, 29-13-0 with 1 no contest, takes on Clay the Carpenter Guida with a current record of 34 wins and 15 losses. Now, Miller is fighting at home in New Jersey. He has won 2 of his last 3 matchups overall and had both wins coming by submission, with a submission loss to Charles Oliveira mixed in. He had lost 4 consecutive between that quick turnaround. For Clay Guida, he's coming off a decision victory over BJ Penn. Won 3 of his last 4. Only loss also to Charles Oliveira by submission. That Brazilian's a nasty, nasty guy on the mat. Physically, Miller 1 inch taller, 1 inch reach advantage, and he's 2 years younger than Clay. Now, when you look at these 2 guys, you say, how have these 2 guys not fought each other? They've been in the promotion forever. Guida debuted in the UFC back in 2006. He's gone 15-13. Miller debuted in 2008. He's gone 19-12 with a no contest. And again, how do these 2 guys not cross paths till now? But I like the fact that we're seeing them at least fight at some point in their careers. Now, when you look at Jim Miller, he's 35 years old. He is fighting at home over in New Jersey. Overall, he's 2-3 with 1 no contest, but he is winless in his last 4 fights at home. That's a lot of pressure coming into this. The last time we saw him was early 2018 when he got knocked out by Dan Hooker. And if you count the loss to Pat Healy way back in the day, which was turned over to a no contest, he has had a lot of struggles fighting in New Jersey. So some people might suggest that a win here could encourage him to say, hey, look, let's go out on top. Let's retire at home and we'll walk away. So this could be a retirement fight for Jim Miller. I think he's kind of indicated he wants to let the cards play out and see how things go before he commits to anything. We'll see how this goes. Now, what does Clay Guida do effectively? We've seen him for a long time. He does have good cardio, maybe not quite as good as it used to be. He works very hard when he's in the cage, but he's not the physical force he used to be. Now, at his best, he can score takedowns and ground opponents down from top position, but he hasn't really looked that effective with his wrestling of late. He's landed just 3 takedowns over his last 5 fights. You have to go all the way back to 2015 for the last time we saw him put up big numbers with takedowns in top position, and that was against Robbie Peralta, and I believe that was at featherweight. Now, his wrestling, again, appears to have taken a step back, and again, that removes one of his key weapons. He has had issues, and when you look at Jim Miller, though, Miller has had issues with bigger guys grinding him out from top position. Diego Sanchez at lightweight certainly had success there. But for one of the very few recent scenarios, at least, Clay is not going to be that much bigger or bigger at all than Miller. In fact, they should be relatively the same size, and that's a good thing for Jim here. You know, Jim can be out-wrestled and lose fights off his back, but he's still an incredibly dangerous grappler. He's very opportunistic, which gets him in trouble if he doesn't succeed when he goes for something. But at the same time, if you give him an opening, he's going to have an opportunity to finish you. Now, what I want to talk about, though, is Jim Miller's striking. I think his striking has remained fairly effective, and maybe he's improved a little bit. He's never been a big knockout guy. He's got some pop. We've seen him stumble some guys, especially when he lands straight down the pipe. He works fairly consistently. He's hurt some guys in exchanges, and a lot of times it sets up a submission game, which negates some of his knockout victories. He just goes for that submission, jumps on their back instead of trying to finish them with strikes. Now, Guida's striking is a little wide and erratic. He does, I think it's a decent right hand he'll throw, and we've seen a little bit once he went to Team Alpha Male to have a little bit of success there. I feel Miller can exploit, though, his wide nature when he throws. Jim Miller also throws some beautiful low leg kicks, inside low leg kicks, that will both take Clay Guida off balance and slow his mobility down. I think those are going to be very effective weapons. And we've seen Jim hold his own with some very good fighters, including the current lightweight interim champion in Dustin Poirier. And I think he's more than capable of doing that against Clay Guida here. Guida's durability is also a bit of an issue. He's not nearly as durable as he used to be. He can be hurt, and his submission defense is a major problem. They usually go hand in hand. A lot of times we see Clay get clipped on the feet or get hurt and then shoot for a takedown, and it gets him in trouble, and his opponent's able to lock something up. And I think we could see something like that transpire here. Overall, I wasn't impressed with Guida against BJ Penn, and Penn started to slow down, which is something we expected of BJ, and that opened the door for kind of Clay to take back over. I think BJ Penn would have been finished by a guy like Jim Miller. I think he's in a better spot right here. Miller's the more technical striker compared to Clay Guida, more impactful and more durable overall. Guida could grind him out from top position or into the cage, just make it a miserable slog of a fight, and I think that's his best avenue to victory here. But I think Jim's grappling and submission game he'll be able to capitalize on something, maybe hurt Clay on the feet and put him down and then lock up a rear naked choke. Miller fighting home will serve as a huge motivator, should have him hyped up to go here. Again, I think Miller catches him on the feet, hurts him, and eventually works to his back. And my prediction is Jim Miller to defeat Clay Guida by submission. In the main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's welterweight division for a very, very exciting matchup in what is probably a title eliminator, as the former interim title champion, Colby Chaos Covington, ranked 2 in the division, 14-1 record overall, takes on the ruthless one, the former champion, the 11th ranked Robbie Lawler. Current record, 28 wins, 13 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, for Covington, he has won 6 in a row. He is 9-1 in the UFC. I will gladly tell you his only loss, a correct prediction on this guy's account, taking Worley Alves to take him out by submission. It almost played out perfectly, catching him along with a guillotine along the cage. Fond memories. In that stretch, he has wins over Rafael Dos Anjos, Damian Maia, Dong Young Kim, Brian Barberina. Solid competition, a nice escalation of competition. He won the interim title against Dos Anjos, but was eventually stripped. Because he had nasal surgery and wasn't able to fight Tyrone Woodley when he was called upon, so he was stripped of the title and they moved on. For Lawler, he won the welterweight strap back in 2014. He defended against Rory McDonald, an amazing fight in a very controversial fight. He defeated Carlos Condit. He then lost to Tyrone Woodley. Is just 1-3 in his last 4 matchups. He had the loss to Dos Anjos in that mix, and then that crazy fight versus Ben Askren. So, top competition across the board for both guys. Physically, both men 5'11", Lawler 2 inches taller. Lawler will have a 2-inch reach advantage. Covington is the younger man by 6 years. Now look at Colby first. He hasn't fought in 13 months, so that's worth noting right away. Hasn't fought in 13 months. Long layoff is absolutely something we could be concerned with here. When Lawler fought Ben Askren, he hadn't fought in 17 months, so he actually was kind of shaking off some ring rust in there. And again, I know some guys like to tell, especially Dominic Cruz, ring rust is not a thing, but I really think, especially for older fighters, staying active is very important. Now, both guys trained at ATT, so there's certainly some background here. Lawler left the camp after winning the title and having some success, went to another camp. Covington took it personally, talked about building Robbie up and seeing this camp really push him, even though they talk about the number of guys that fought there. really stayed away from each other because they recognized that eventually they would cross paths at some point. But again, Covington saying he's fighting on behalf of the camp that really got him to where he needed to be, and then he turned his back on them. Now, Robbie tends to be a bit of a low-key guy, does a lot of his talking in the cage. Not so much for Colby. He's brash. He's that big boaster, a lot of social media talk. He's invited Donald Trump to the fight. I don't know if he'll show up or not. But again, very over the top, not well-liked overall. Now, very dissimilar styles, but at the same time quite similar. Covington's a grinder. He uses pressure to break his opponents down, wrestling, clinch, striking, transitions between all of them very well, and just looks to overwhelm them for a wide decision or a stoppage victory. Now for Lawler, he is a knockout artist. He's a guy who wants to come in there and bang and batter his opponents, take their best shots, throw back, hurt them, keeps engaging, and eventually takes a decision from you or knocks you out. Now, they're similar in that Lawler likes to outwork opponents late. Take the best you can get, just like Covington. Outwork guys, just keep throwing them on. Lawler's never come out and pressure from one start to the finish. He might be a quick starter and slow down. But the thing is, he wants to break you with violence and your inability to finish him. Outpace him, especially in the fifth round where his rates tend to go up, and just beat you because he's doing more than you when it counts. Now, Covington, overall, when you look at their 5-round records, Covington went 5 rounds with Dos Anjos. It's the only 5-round fight on his resume. He's 7-0 in decisions. Lawler, he lost a 5-round fight against Dos Anjos. Prior to that, though, he had won 4 consecutive 5-round fights, and he's 4-2 in the UFC when going the distance. 7-5 overall in decisions, though. Now, some of those losses came early in his career, and other ones have come against top-level competition. Now, Colby's wrestling, not surprisingly, is a key to his success. 51% takedown completion percentage, always pushing for takedowns, chains takedown attempts together, isn't afraid to shoot 2 or 3 times and just keep driving until he puts you on the mat. And again, the numbers he's put up, 7 against Dos Anjos, 8 against Kim, those are very hard guys to take down, 12 against Brian Barberina, 6 against Max Griffin, huge numbers. Covington likes to push that furious pace. He did so against RDA, just kept coming forward. He was winging wild punches and closing the gap, pushed him into the cage. Again, melding those takedowns, just keep attacking. And Colby does get most of his takedowns along the cage, so he wants to back you up. Now, RDA had some success firing back, and Colby was eating some strikes. But RDA is not that one-punch knockout threat. He's not that guy who's going to start hitting you and you're going to start finding that you're going to be in trouble. He needs to pile up the offense and do it with consistency. Dos Anjos had a lot of success in that fight when he went first, but unfortunately he didn't go first very often. That's what got him in trouble. Colby has a good right leg high kick, which he'll throw periodically. He can throw punches in numbers, but again, he tends to be a little bit wide. He was having success with some low kicks against Damian Maia, and we saw Dos Anjos have similar success against Lawler. In fact, I believe he tore his ACL. Lawler did in that fight, which can be attributed to some of those low kicks. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of seemed to be the narrative they were pushing. We did see Colby show against Maia he can win a fight without leg takedowns using pressure and pace. Now, Maia landed a lot of vertical offense in that fight, especially in the first round. He actually cut Colby. Now, he's a southpaw, much like Robbie Lawler, which could present some questions for Covington. And Colby was overextending, trying to land some strikes in that fight, and Maia was cracking him, backing him up, had Colby smiling, seemed to have Colby a little bit unnerved, and Maia's not a guy known for knocking people out. So you look at that and you go, if Maia can have that success, can Robbie replicate it? Now, when you look at Robbie Lawler, he struggled with RDA because of the lateral movement, the distance management, the fact that RDA was just able to avoid a lot of what Lawler threw his way. And again, you figure in the torn ACL, it was very difficult for Robbie to mount the offense he wanted to. RDA had success closing the distance and clinching, pushing Robbie into the wall. But Robbie was able to turn him a lot of the times and push him out of the way, get him up against the cage himself, and then disengage. And that was clear. We did see Robbie have some success throwing big bombs. He's got that massive right hook. He'll work in some uppercuts when RDA was back against the cage, turn that fight into a brawl. He just didn't have the ability to push it like he normally does. I do and don't like the way Robbie shells up under fire. It allows his opponent, and he rolls with punches, and allows his opponent to land a lot of strikes. RDA at one point went off, landed big barrages. I don't know about the impact, but it still looks good. But then Robbie can counter back, and if he can get you to punch yourself out, he has the opportunity to turn that in his favor. Now, RDA scored some takedowns along the cage, which is something Colby will want to replicate, but Robbie's very good at getting back up. He's got good takedown defense. We saw it against Ben Askren. He had a good sprawl early on. He denied those takedowns. He slammed them. He needs to create separation, and I hope he learned that against Ben, where it's like, yeah, when a wrestler wants to take you down and gets in on you, you got to get back out once you've successfully defended the initial shot. I don't like the way Colby's too willing to wade forward and eat strikes. Damian Maia bloodied him up, hurt him. Lawler's going to as well. We saw it against Askren, just moving forward, unwilling to defend or feeling your wrestling is going to be enough. I had Masvidal in that fight. I didn't expect it to happen in such a short, small sample size, but that's kind of what I was anticipating, is that Askren's willingness to wade forward would get him in trouble. I didn't think that type of trouble, but still, you see what I'm talking about. Lawler's a fairly good counter wrestler. RDA had success wrestling him and clinching him, not that much, but a lot of it was set up by his sharp striking. He flowed them together nicely, and that made it a lot for Robbie to deal with. Covington, he had the pressure and size to beat Dos Anjos, but Dos Anjos lacked the big power threat to back him off and to make him pay for getting in too close. I think Lawler's counter wrestling is good enough, and the threat of his striking on the feet is going to make Covington pay for his aggression. I think we'll see Lawler push him back a little bit, create separation, and land big shots, create a brawl, turn this into a big fight, and eventually land something significant. And I know this is not a popular opinion, but I think Lawler gets the nod here, and my prediction is Robbie Lawler to defeat Colby Covington by TKO. So those are my 6 mic card predictions for UFC on ESPN 5. All of my preliminary picks, as per usual, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Very much looking forward to this card. Again, it's an afternoon card for those of you who might have missed it. But make sure you are zoned in for the early start. My bet packs are available for sale as well. Try and get them up a little bit quicker. Again, no promises, big weekend for me for other things not related to MMA. And what else is it worth noticing? Again, subscribe to me on YouTube. Make sure you click and subscribe and click the notification button so you get the little bell, so you get all the notifications when I post things. And KO_predictions at Twitter is my handle there, and I can hear my children fighting upstairs, so it's probably time to wrap this sucker up. So I need to go clean some clocks, if you will. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Greatly appreciate it, and I will talk to you in the not too distant future. Take care. Hi.